Hello, I would like to welcome our viewers. The meeting of the Hungarian-American Foreign Minister has just ended. The meeting of the Hungarian-American Foreign Minister has just ended. Minister, this meeting was held in a very important period of time, both in terms of international policy and, of course, in terms of Hungarian-American relations. What conclusions can be drawn from this meeting?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome our viewers at home. I think that the most important news for the Hungarian people, families, and the whole of Hungary is that the President of the United States, the Foreign Minister, and the entire American government stood by his position that this war cannot continue despite all the difficulties and conflicts. I think this is the best news for Hungary and for the Hungarian people, that the American government absolutely stood by its position. The foreign minister clearly stated that in the peace talks they see the only realistic possibility that this war will not continue and that the war must end. I told the foreign minister that Hungary fully supports the intentions of the President of the United States and his government. We fully support the peace talks and we trust them to succeed. We also agreed that it is not a strategy to continue the war as long as possible. On the other hand, this is a dangerous position, because the further this war continues in our neighborhood, the greater the risk of escalation, the greater the risk that this war will turn into an even more serious tragedy. The foreign minister also stated that the United States has temporarily suspended the military support of Ukraine. I also informed him that there is an organization in Europe, especially in the western part of the country, against Donald Trump and against Donald Trump's peace plan. I also informed him that on the day after tomorrow, European prime ministers and heads of state will meet primarily to discuss peace talks in a different position. But I also informed him that Hungary does not make any decisions that pose a threat to the continuation of the war. We are absolutely committed to maintaining peace and peace talks. The most important thing is that the position of the US President and Foreign Minister is clear. This war cannot continue in Ukraine.
Despite all the organizations and all the criticism, the Hungarian position will be clear at the European Union summit. How is this possible? How can Hungary live in peace in this situation?
First of all, we agreed that we work together in the EU. We were the only EU member state that stood by the United States last week in the EU, when the United States extended the peace agreement, which was the only rational and realistic peace agreement. In Europe, of course, they were angry with us, but the constant fuss about who was wrong and who was the aggressor did not help. This happened for 3 years and it did not help. Something new is needed. Peace talks are needed. This is why we supported the American peace agreement in the EU, which was then accepted by the Security Council. We also agreed on the wrong and dishonest approach that if someone stands next to peace, they are immediately accused of being a Russian party. This is a very painful, simplistic, clearly inoperative and dishonest approach. The most we can do is to strengthen the peace agreement in international politics and provide American-Russian talks with our constant support. Of course, we cannot predict the success of these talks, but there is no other solution. If the Americans and the Russians did not try to succeed in these talks, the war would certainly continue. And the risk of an even bigger tragedy would increase.
The two-sided questions and the two-sided relations have been mentioned, but what Marco Rubio is responsible for as foreign minister is the transformation of international aid and American aid policy.
First of all, I would like to thank the foreign minister for his decision to close the USAID sources. The USAID sources are the basis of the American foreign policy that is based on the internal affairs of other countries, which the world democratic government has suffered from for 4 years. I think that the world has become a significant part of it when these sources used for the internal affairs of other countries were shut down. I thanked him for this. Here with me is our new Secretary General, who is responsible for examining the political influence of the USAID sources during the use of Hungary. In the coming period, he will continue several talks here in the United States in order to make it clear who and how used these sources for internal affairs in Hungary. Of course, we did not talk about the two-sided economic cooperation issues, because a new golden age can welcome the Hungarian-American economic cooperation, and in this respect there is total openness, even commitment and interest. We listed the measures that the Biden administration brought in a few days or weeks before the shutdown, and which were clearly born with the intention of political violence in order to harm Hungary and then harm the future Hungarian-American relations. At the same time, there is an absolute 100% openness in the current administration to examine these violent measures brought in by the Biden administration, to terminate them. There are sanctions in relation to Hungarian energy security, including the purchase of natural gas and nuclear energy, but there is also the sanctioning of Prime Minister Rogan. In all three cases, we initiated the necessary legal procedures, and today the foreign minister assured us of his absolute openness that we should leave these violent measures behind as soon as possible. We also discussed the cooperation in clothing. American companies have a large clothing community in Hungary. More than 100,000 Hungarian people work there, and the decision of the Biden administration also hurt their interests, because they practically terminated the agreement on the 2-year suspension, because we Hungarians were not willing to stand in line in relation to the global minimum wage. Donald Trump also opposes the global minimum wage, so we are in the same position again, and today the foreign minister also registered the importance of re-establishing the agreement on the 2-year suspension. So I think that today we can absolutely prove that the current American administration sees us as friends. The current American president and his administration see the development of Hungarian-American relations as an important task. This is a cooperation based on friendship and absolute mutual respect, which can be extremely fruitful in the coming period. But the most important thing is that the U.S. President, the Foreign Minister, and the U.S. government both have a clear position. This war did not continue in our neighborhood, and I think this is the most important good news for us Hungarians today.